Hey everybody, cool stuff to talk about today. So today we are continuing our unit on the law and you. Specifically today we're going to talk about 3 Supreme Court cases. All right. These all generally deal, again, individual rights. It's the Supreme Court interpreting laws and how they affect individual rights by basing it on the Constitution. As we talked about, Marbury v. Madison gave them that ability. We got some cool ones today. Today we're going to get up kind of into the 1960s and talk about some very pivotal court cases that happened just 50, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, that basically strengthen the individual rights that people have under the government. And a lot of these are going to deal with preventing the government from overstepping. The Supreme Court looks at the Bill of Rights and the rights that people have and interpret those and try to keep the government from overstepping their bounds. It's a pivotal job that the Supreme Court has. And the ones we're going to talk about today are, obviously, they're famous. We're talking about it in a civic survey course. All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so the first case today, this is an interesting story. It's neat if I did it in 30 seconds. It gets even better if you go into the details of it. So that's awesome. All right. So this court case is Map v. Ohio. And it has to do with search warrants. All right. That might not seem super exciting or a really cool story to learn about. But if you're like a crime drama type person, you're going to like this one. So, there's this woman named Dolly Map. All right. We're in 1961. We're in Ohio. All right. Dolly Map goes by Dolly. All right. She has a boyfriend and a guy named Shonder Burns. All right. Now, if that guy seems to be a lot older than Dolly Map, that was the case. I could have found younger pictures of him and make him look the same age, but that wouldn't have been accurate. So Shonder Burns is older than Dolly Map, if that matters to you. So you're like, well, what's the draw to this guy? All right, like why would Dolly Map be interested in Shonder Burns? Well, because he's like the gangster kingpin in Ohio. Shonder Burns is a mobster, more or less, or more, in Ohio. All right, he is like everybody knows that Shonder Burns. This is the guys in charge of organized crime in Ohio, in large part. A lot of the stuff he's involved in is like illegal betting and things like that. That is very illegal in places where it's outlawed, and it was in Ohio at the time. Ohio also had a whole bunch of stuff outlawed in 1961 that I think today we would be somewhat surprised by. One of the things, and this is going to seem really random, and you're like, well, Mr. Wagstaff is going out of left field on this. It is relevant. One of the things that's illegal in Ohio is pornography. And you're like, whoa, did not expect that to show up on today's lesson. It is actually relevant. Just pornography is illegal in Ohio in 1961. That's going to be relevant. All right. So, what does this have to do with anything, right? Shonder Burns, he's a gangster. He is dating Dolly Map, all right? Well, all right, one of Shonder Burns's acquaintances is a guy named Virgil Ogletree, all right? So Virgil Ogletree, all right, he had done some stuff to get himself in some trouble. He is suspected of bombing. He's suspected of a bombing, all right? So the police are out looking for Virgil Ogletree as he is suspected as a bomber. You with me so far? All right, that's fine. Well, here's what happens. The police believe that Virgil Ogletree is being held up at Burns's house, which is where Dolly Map is. So the police show up to the house, right? And they want to come in and see if Virgil Ogletree is in the house, all right? Dolly Map is there, Burns is not. She smartly, because when you're not married, when you're dating a mobster, you kind of know how to act in these situations. First thing she does is she calls her lawyer. All right, and she says, "What should I do?" And the lawyer says, "Do not let them in. They have to have. They don't have a warrant that they can't come in." That was even the rule at the time. Like even then, it was already the rule. So she was like, "No, you can't come in." So the police are very grumpy, right? Because they're like, "We know old Virgil Ogletree is in there." So they sit and wait for a while until backup arrives. Then the police storm into her house. Right, into Map's house. Burns is not there, looking for Virgil Ogletree. Now, this is I keep saying house. It is a private residence, but it is an apartment that her and Burns rent. They go through the house. They're looking for Virgil Ogletree. All right. She says, "I need to see a warrant." They pull out a warrant and show it to her, which she immediately grabs and puts it in her dress. As soon as she grabs this warrant from them, all the police get really upset and they go and grab it. They literally handcuff her for her own safety, and they take this piece of paper back that was the warrant. She never saw it, lawyers never saw it, nobody ever saw it, and shocker, it's never shown ever again in court or anything like that because, let's be honest, there is no warrant. They tried to bully themselves into this woman's apartment. Now, Virgil Ogletree, all right, is actually found in a neighbor's apartment. So Virgil Ogletree is not actually even in this apartment. But the police, since they're in the apartment anyway, they start looking for illegal stuff. Well, it's a mobster's house. They find betting tickets, all right? Basically, this is proof in their mind that there is illegal betting going on, which leads to organized crime. And because of that, and because Map was there, they arrest Dolly Map. I think that there were some weapons. There was these betting tickets. And then, and this is a second thought at the time, they find some pornography, all right? And they arrest Dolly Map for racketeering or something like that. They arrest her for basically the betting tickets and stuff that were found. So remember old Virgil they caught? When they arrest him and they try to put him on trial, they realize he didn't actually do that bombing. And Virgil Ogletree, he's acquitted. So they're like, well, we're going to get Dolly Map. They can't connect those betting slips with Dolly Map either. And Dolly Map is acquitted. The cops are grumpy because they just arrested all these people and all of them got found not guilty and they're free. So you're like, okay, Mr. Wagstaff, this is like a big Supreme Court case or something. What? So people got arrested. It seems kind of shady, but they all got found not guilty and they left and went home. Everything's fine. This seems weird. That's to basically build up the fact of how grumpy everybody is with Dolly Map. All right, like the police, they're like, oh, snaggle fraggle, we're upset. In 1961 in Ohio. Well, they did find enough information to arrest Chandler Burns, which is Map's boyfriend. All right. Now, if you're married, random tidbit of information, if you're married, nobody can force you to testify against your husband or wife. It's just like one of the rules. You can't require it. But if you're dating, and that's what happens here. So Burns is arrested. He's put on trial for all these crimes. Ohio expects his girlfriend, Map, to testify against him. She's like, nah, I'm not going to do that. And they get mad at her because she refuses to testify. While that's not illegal, what they decide to do is just to vindictively get back at her because she's been a thorn in their side. They go back and charge her with possession of pornography, which was illegal in Ohio at the time because they found some magazines or something. I don't know what they found. Which she claims, they just moved into the apartment. That was stuff that was left there by the previous tenant, whatever. But they can't try her again for the betting slips because she's already found not guilty. Can't do double jeopardy. But since they did not charge her with the pornography when they raided her house, they are now doing that. All right, and they convict her of pornography charges. So she is like, this is awful. It's interesting how this case works out with Map v. Ohio, as we're getting there. She appeals the decision. Honestly, she's not as upset. She doesn't think to focus on the idea as she appeals this decision that it was an illegal search, because they did have a warrant. Like, she's not really thinking about that. She's thinking about the fact that I just got arrested for pornography that wasn't even mine. Like, the laws dealing with pornography in Ohio at the time were just crazy strict. And she's like, that's a silly thing to be arresting people and put them in jail for criminal acts. So she sues Ohio and says that's wrong. It makes it all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court gets the case. And now while she is arguing over like these pornography laws are awful in Ohio, they're like, wait a minute. Did they, meaning the state of Ohio, illegally enter this woman's house because they can't prove that they had a warrant, which is their responsibility to prove? They illegally entered her house, found something to get her in trouble for, and then arrested her for stuff that was illegally obtained. Now, what's interesting, the federal government has forever could not do this. They couldn't use illegally obtained evidence so they didn't have a warrant. The federal government can't do that, but the states say, we're not federal government. We can do whatever we want. The Supreme Court, they're going to rule in Map v. Ohio, nah. You have to have a search warrant. You can't, if you're at home and you're on, you have to have a search warrant for they can just come in and raid your house. Otherwise, you could just assume anybody's doing anything and go and raid their private property and find something that they're doing wrong. This is commonly like when you get pulled over in a car and police are like, can I search? That gets touchy depending on the road that you're on, whether on because you're on, if it's like an interstate highway or a state road, you're on state or federal property, even though you're on private cars, so it can vary from state to state. But as far as entering your house, Map v. Ohio changes the rules, and necessarily clarifies them. Here's what the rule is: you must have a search warrant. Then you can get the evidence that you are searching for in that search warrant. You can't just grab anything. Now, if you walk in and you have a mountain-sized pile of drugs, like in clear view, like propped up at your window and the police can see it like walking by, that's different. But they can't go rummaging through your house to search for things, which is exactly what happened to Dolly Map. And it has to be on private property. It depends on where you are, but your private residence, they cannot enter and search your house without a search warrant. And Map v. Ohio clarifies that intricately. So the question here is, why is this court case considered a positive for the people, meaning the people, even though a woman who had clearly broken the law was allowed to walk free? That seems a pretty tough question. I mean, the law she broke was a pretty minuscule by today's standards, but the question remains, why is this good? Because the whole concept, you're innocent till proven guilty in a court of law, that you're looking for the best in people at all times. Making sure that you have a search warrant and know exactly what you're looking for prevents abuse of power by police and the federal government from just raiding your personal property and rooting around until they can find something to get you in trouble for. They have to know in advance and have a search warrant signed off on by a judge before they can come get something they already believe is there. So the question seems a little tough, but we're gonna have a similar question in a future lesson with Miranda v. Ohio, Miranda v. Arizona, in which this question takes on a little bit different meaning. All right, answer that. We're moving on. Ingle v. Vitale in 1962. This one is a pretty straightforward court case. Has to do with religion in schools. It's straightforward, but doesn't mean it's not controversial depending on your belief systems. Here's what was happening, all right? So a school district basically said, hey, we are going to have an optional, they even from the beginning, they said it's optional, not required for this prayer. We're going to recite this prayer the school staff is going to recite this prayer every day over the intercom. You can choose to join in or not. All right? Thinking that they were covered, not forcing anybody to do anything they don't want to, can't be a problem. So they did this, and then they get sued. It makes it all the way to the Supreme Court. And here's the argument. Based on our Constitution, all right, you can't do that. This is what the Supreme Court says. And they make a pretty convincing argument here, all right? The reason that you can't have this prayer is because if the school administration, for religious purposes, is reciting a prayer, even if it's optional or not, they're choosing the prayer. Is it a Muslim prayer? Is it a Jewish prayer? Is it a Christian prayer? Is it any of the other religions, a Buddhist prayer? All right? You are still, meaning the administration, is still choosing which religion they want and putting one above the others by choosing that. Now, the reason it's important in schools is school is funded by the government. It is state government, but the federal government, the Constitution, the government. The First Amendment is freedom of religion, which means the government will not choose one religion over another. It will not, and from the beginning, we saw Protestants and Catholics, the original colonization of our country. So the government can't pick one religion over another. And the Supreme Court's like, man, you can't have a school-led prayer because you, as the school, are picking one religion over another. You can't do that. Now, that is a relatively logical explanation. The interpretation of this, and the general public seems to be crazy. People are like, you can't have Jesus in school. That's 100% not accurate. Students are more than welcome to worship however they want in school. It's nobody stopping a prayer from happening in school. Obviously, there's a whole distraction. We'll talk about other court cases with distractions in the school day. But as far as saying you can't bring a Bible to school, that's not a fact. You can bring Bibles because the Bibles aren't outlawed. There is a school district I teach up until a few years ago. We taught a class on Bible history. It is not banned. Religion is not banned. It just can't be led and forced by the administration. Student-led prayer, by choice, is generally accepted. So they're not banning religion. They just don't want the school to endorse one religion over another. And if you're like, well, we'll do a prayer from all the religions. It's a lot of religions. And you would just not have a school day anymore. You'd just be praying in all the different religions all day. And not to mention, that's going to offend everybody as opposed to make everybody happy. So, the question here is, why is prayer in school an issue that the courts feel they had to intervene on? Because of the Bill of Rights, which says freedom of religion in America. They feel like the court, when they ruled on this, that by having a prayer picked by the administration and presented to the kids, and they represent the government, the state government at the time, it is the government picking one religion over another, and therefore that violates the First Amendment, and they said, no on that one. All right, get 2 sentences in that, pause me, we'll move on. All righty, if you're like, Mr. Wagstaff, these are good, they should be a movie, or hopefully you're interested. Anyway, this one, Gideon v. Wainwright, it is a movie. It's called Gideons Trumpet. It's fantastic. It is a great movie. I can't do it justice. Matt v. Ohio, I don't know there being a great movie with Matt v. Ohio. There's a fantastic one with Gideon v. Wainwright, which happened in 1963. And the name of the movie is Gideon's Trumpet. It's fantastic. So I'm going to get you the highlights here. But it is an awesome, it's an awesome story. Go watch the movie, Gideons v. Wainwright. All right, obviously after, don't stop watching this. All right, this here, Clarence Earl Gideon. Clarence Earl Gideon is an alcoholic. Uneducated, he's an alcoholic. He's in Florida. It's 5, so I shouldn't laugh. It's 5:30 in the morning. Man needs a drink. So he goes out to his local bar, and he is standing outside. He has a bottle of wine in his hand, all right, waiting for the bar to open. I don't know if he's even aware of this. Somebody in the middle of the night has showed up, broken into this bar, and stolen all their money and trashed the police. So when the police show up because of the robbery, guess who's standing there? Clarence Earl Gideon. And they arrest him. I mean, he's got change in his pocket. He's got a bottle of wine. He's right here next to the crime scene. He's like, doesn't even like. The police are like, open and shut case. All right, dude clearly did this. And let's be honest, looking at the evidence, it looks pretty much like Clarence Earl Gideon did it. Like he clearly, everybody's like, well, he obviously did it. So he goes to court and they're like, how do you plead? He's like, not guilty. And they're like, oh, dude, just say you did it. He's like, but I didn't do it. And they're like, oh, well, fine. I guess we'll go to trial. And he says, okay, can I have a lawyer? Like, because this is like prison for him. If he's convicted, he'll go to prison for years. And he's like, can I have a lawyer? And they're like, no, man, you don't get a law. Like, unless it's like a death penalty case or like a murder case, you don't get a lawyer. Like, we can't afford to give everybody lawyers, so you just have to defend yourself. Clarence Earl Gideon, who has no education, has to defend himself against the prosecutor, who is a licensed lawyer. You know how this goes. He's found guilty. He gets sent to prison for 5 years. Clarence Earl Gideon's like, I didn't do it. This is bull. My rights are violated. I should have a lawyer, right? And he basically sues Florida, and then they upheld it. It gets appealed up to the Supreme Court, and so the Supreme Court hears it. And this one of the best arguments. And here's the crazy thing: nobody's helping Clarence Earl Gideon do this. The prison that he's at just happens to have a library. He's uneducated because he's never really been to school. He's got plenty of time to go to school now and reads all the law books that he can. He writes the Supreme Court. Now, this is in the 60s, but it's still typewriter, handwritten letter to the Supreme Court like, hey, here's my rights have been violated. They agree with him. They want to hear the case. The lawyer that represents him in front of the Supreme Court, I don't know if Clarence Earl Gideon, I'm sure he'll meet him later on, but so Clarence Earl Gideon's like in jail. There's somebody arguing his case in front of the Supreme Court who ends up being a super famous lawyer and a Supreme Court justice himself eventually. And he makes an argument that the Supreme Court justice is like, that's one of the best arguments we've ever heard. There's this dude in American history we'll talk about, a guy named Clarence Darrow, fantastic lawyer, one of the absolute best defense lawyers on earth at the time. He gets arrested for jury tampering. You know what the first thing the greatest lawyer in America does at the time? Hires a lawyer to represent him. And this had happened before this. And the guy that's helping out Clarence says, if the greatest lawyer in America, the first thing he does is gets a lawyer, all right, because he doesn't think he can do it on his own, how do you think Clarence Earl Gideon, with zero education and zero knowledge of the law, how is he going to effectively defend himself? And the Supreme Court justice is like, that's a really good argument. So the Supreme Court hears it, and they agree. If it's prison, if you're talking about prison, you get a lawyer. State will pay for it. You get a lawyer to defend you. And Clarence Earl Gideon's like, yay! Like, and it's Gideon v. Wainwright. Everybody gets a lawyer. You get a lawyer. You get a lawyer. Everybody gets a lawyer. Now, Clarence Gideon, and this is where the story gets awesome. Clarence Gideon doesn't just get out of jail. All it says is your trial was wrong. We're going to do it again. This time, you have a lawyer. Everybody in prison claims they're innocent. I've seen enough TV to know that, I guess. They prove he's innocent. Clarence, and like they end up catching the other guy. He was never near that burglary. He had nothing to do with the burglary. A lot of these, it's like, oh, you let like a guilty person go free. Not in this case. This is a slam dunk win in all. It's kind of a feel good case, even though he was wrongly convicted. Which the whole concept, you're innocent until proven guilty, without a lawyer to represent you. It's not fair if the person trying to put you in jail is a lawyer. The question here is, what rule was changed because of the Supreme Court case? Why is it fair, quote unquote, that everybody has access to a lawyer? Like, how does that help society? What does it help prevent from happening? All right, hope you enjoyed that. That's as far as we're going to get today. Answer that to 2 complete sentences, and I will see you guys tomorrow.